Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's stories. We now return to Jingo by Terry Pratchett. Part 15. Prince Cadram and his generals surveyed the distant enemy from horseback. The various Klatchian armies were drawn up in front of Gebra. Compared to them, the Ankh-Morpork regiment looked like a group of tourists who had missed their coach. "Is that all?" he said.
"Yes, sire," said General Ashal. "But you see, they believe that fortune favors the brave."
"That is a reason to field such a contemptible little army."
"Ah, sire, but they believe that we will turn and run as soon as we taste some gold steel."
The prince looked back at the distant banners.
"Why? I couldn't say, sire. It appears to be an item of faith."
"Strange." The prince nodded to one of his bodyguards. "Fetch me some cold steel." After some hurried discussion, a sword was handed up very gingerly, handle first. The prince peered at it, and then licked it with a theatrical care. The watching soldiers laughed.
"No,"
he said at last. "No, I have to say that I don't feel the least apprehensive. Is this as cold as steel gets?"
"Lord Rust was probably being metaphorical, sire."
"Ah, he is the sort who would be. Well, let us go forward and meet him. We must be civilized after all." He urged his horse forward. The generals fell in behind him. The prince leaned down towards General Ashal again. "And why are we going out to meet him before battle commences?"
It's a goodwill gesture, sire. Warriors honoring one another."
"But the man's a complete incompetent."
"Indeed, sire."
"And we're about to set thousands of our countrymen against one another, aren't we?"
"Indeed, sire."
"So what does the maniac want to do? Tell me, there's no hard feelings?"
"Broadly speaking, sire, yes. I understand the motto of his old school was, 'It matters not that you won or lost, but that you took part.'"
The prince's lips moved as he tried this out once or twice. Finally he said, "And knowing this, people still take orders from him?"
"It would seem so, sire."
Prince Cadram shook his head. "We can learn from Ankh-Morpork," his father had said. "Sometimes we can learn what not to do." And so he'd set out to learn. First, he'd learned that Ankh-Morpork had once ruled quite a slice of Klatch. He'd visited the ruins of one of its colonies, and so he'd found out the name of the man who had been audacious enough to do this, and had got agents in Ankh-Morpork to find out as much about him as possible. General Tacticus he'd been called, and Prince Cadram had read a lot, and remembered everything, and tactics had been very, very useful in the widening of the empire. Of course, this had its own drawbacks. You had a border, and across the border came bandits, so you sent a force to quell the bandits, and in order to stamp them out, you had to take over their country, and soon you had another restless little vassal state to rule. And now that had a border, over which came, sure as sunrise, a fresh lot of raiders. So your new tax-paying subjects were demanding protection from their brother raiders, neglecting to pay their taxes, and doing a little light banditry on the side. And so once again you stretched your forces, whether you wanted to or not. He sighed. For the serious empire builder, there was no such thing as a final frontier. There was only another problem. If only people would understand. Nor was there such a thing as a game of war. General Tacticus knew that. Learn about your opposite number, yes, and respect his abilities if he had them, certainly. But never pretend that afterwards you were going to meet up for a drink and charge by charge replay.
He could well be insane, sire, the general went on. Oh, good. However, I'm told that he recently referred to Klatchians as the finest soldiers in the world, sire.
Really?
He added, when led by white officers, sire.
Oh.
And we were offering him breakfast, sire. It would be most impolite of him to refuse. And we are offering him breakfast, sire. It would be most impolite of him to refuse.
What a good idea.
Have we got an adequate supply of sheep's eyes? I took the liberty of telling the cooks to save some up for this very eventuality, sire. Then we must see he gets them. After all, he will be our honored guest. Well, let us do this thing properly. Please try to look as if you hate the taste of cold steel. The Klatchians had set up an open-sided tent on the sand between the two armies. In the welcome shade, a low table had been laid. Lord Rust and his company were already waiting, and had been for more than half an hour. They stood up and bowed awkwardly as Prince Cadram entered. Around the tent, the Klatch and Ankh-Morpork honor guards eyed one another suspiciously, every man trying to get the drop on the others. Tell me, do any of you gentlemen speak Klatchian? Said Prince Cadram after the lengthy introductions. Lord Rust's grin stayed fixed. Hornet, he hissed. I'm not quite certain what he said, sir, said the lieutenant nervously. I thought you knew Klatchian. I can read it, sir. That's not the same. Oh, don't worry, said the prince. As we say in Klatch, this clown's in charge of an army? Around the tent, the Klatchian general suddenly went poker-faced. Hornet? Something about to own, to control, Cadram smiled at Lord Rust. I'm not entirely familiar with this custom, he said. You often meet your enemies before battle? It is considered horrible, said Lord Rust. I believe that on the night before the famous Battle of Pseudopolis, officers from both sides attended a ball at Lady Selachiai's, for example. The prince glared questioningly at General Ashal, who nodded. Really? Obviously, we have so much to learn. As the poet Mosheda says, I can't believe this man. Ah, yes, said Lord Rust. Klatchian is a very poetic language. Excuse me, sir, said Lieutenant Hornet. What is it, man? There's, something going on. There was a column of dust in the distance. Something was approaching fast. One moment, said General Ashal. He came back from his saddle with an ornate metal tube, covered in the curly Klatchian script. He squinted into one end and pointed the other at the cloud. Mounted men, he said. Camels and horses.
That's a make things bigger device, isn't it? Said Lord Rust. My word, you are up to date. They were invented only last year. I didn't buy this, my lord. I inherited it from my grandfather. The general looked through the eyepiece again. About 40 men, I'd say. Dear me, murmured Prince Cadram. Reinforcements, Lord Rust. The rider in the lead is holding a banner, I think, still rolled up. Certainly not, sire, said Lord Rust. Behind him, Lord Selachii rolled his eyes. Ah, now he's unfurling it. It's a white flag, sire. Someone wishes to surrender? The general lowered his telescope. It doesn't. I don't. They seem to be in a great hurry to do so, sire. Send a squad to apprehend them, said Prince Cadram. We will do so too, added Lord Rust hurriedly, nodding to the lieutenant. Ah, a joint effort, said the prince. A few seconds later, groups of men detached themselves from each army and rode out on an interception course. Everyone saw the sudden glints of sunlight from the approaching cloud. Weapons had been drawn. Fighting under a flag of surrender? That's immoral, said Lord Rust. Novel, certainly, said the prince. The three companies would have met had it not been that even experts find it hard to judge how much ground a running camel can cover. By the time both commanders realized they should start to turn, they should have already been turning. It seems your people misjudge things, sire, said Lord Rust. I knew I should have had them led by white officers, said the prince. But, oh dear, it seems your men have been equally unlucky. He stopped. Some confusion had resulted. The foray parties had their instructions, but no one had told them what to do if they ran into the other foray party. And it was composed, after all, of men they were about to fight, and everyone knew they were treacherous, greasy towelheads, or perfidious, untrustworthy, sausage-eating madmen. And this was a battlefield, and everyone was frightened and, therefore, angry. And everyone was armed. Sam Vimes heard the shouting behind him, but had other things on his mind at this point. It is impossible to ride a running camel without concentrating on your liver and kidneys, in the hope that they wouldn't be pounded out of your body. The thing's legs weren't moving right, he was sure. Nothing on normal legs could be jolting him around so much. The horizon jerked backwards and forwards and up and down. What was it Ahmed had said? Vimes hit the camel hard and yelled, "Hut, hut, 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 hut!" It accelerated. The jolts ran together, so that his body was no longer being jolted, but was in effect in a permanent state of jolt. Vimes thrashed it again and tried to yell, "Hut, hut, 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 hut!" although the word came out more like, in any case, the camel found some extra knees somewhere. There was more shouting behind him. Turning his head as much as he dared, he saw several of his accompanying dregs falling behind. He was certain he heard Carrot yell, but he couldn't be certain because of his own screaming. "Stop, you bastard!" he yelled. The tent was coming up fast. Vimes slapped the stick down again and hauled on the reins, and clearly now judging with special camel sensitivity that this was the most embarrassing moment to stop, the camel stopped. Vimes slid forward, flung his arms around a neck that was apparently thatched with old doormats, and half fell, half dropped onto the sand. Other camels were thudding to a halt around him. Carrot grabbed his arm. "Are you all right, sir?
That was amazing! You really impressed the dregs, screaming defiance like that. And you were still shouting for the camel to go faster when it was already galloping. Jingo. The guards around the tent were hesitating, but that wouldn't last long. The wind caught the white flag on Carrot's lance, making it snap. Sir, this is all right, isn't it? I mean, usually a white flag. Might as well show what we're fighting for, eh? I suppose so, sir. Dregs had surrounded the tent. The air was full of dust and screams. What happened back there? A bit of fracas, sir. Carrot hesitated and then corrected himself. That is, Ankh-Morpork soldiers and Klatchians have started fighting, sir, and the dregs are fighting both of them. What? Before the battle's officially declared? Can't you get disqualified for that? Vimes looked back at the guards and pointed to the flag. You know what this flag is, he said. Well, I want you to... Aren't you Mr. Vimes? Said one of the Morporkians. And that's Captain Carrot, isn't it? Oh, hello, Mr. Small Plank, said Carrot. Feeding you well, are they? Yes, sir. Vimes rolled his eyes. That was Carrot again, knowing everyone. And the man had called him sir. We just need to go through, said Carrot. We won't be a minute. Well, sir, these Small Plank hesitated. Certain words didn't come so easily when the subjects were standing very close to you, looking very big and tooled up. These Klatchians are on guard too, you see. A stream of blue smoke was blown past Vimes's ear. Good morning, gentlemen, said 71-hour Ahmed. He had a dreg crossbow in each hand. You will note that the soldiers behind me are also well armed. Good. My name is 71-hour Ahmed. I will shoot the last man to drop his weapons. You have my word on it. The Morporkians looked puzzled. The Klatchians began to whisper urgently. Put him down, boys, said Vimes. The Morporkians threw their swords down hurriedly. The Klatchians dropped theirs very shortly afterwards. A tie between the gentleman on the left and the tall one with the squint, said 71-hour Ahmed, raising both bows. Hey, said Vimes, you can't. The bows twanged. The men dropped yelling. Arr! However, said Ahmed, handing the bows to a dreg behind him who handed him another loaded one. Out of deference to the sensibilities of Commander Vimes here, I'm settling for one in the thigh and one in the toes. We are, after all, on a mission of peace. He turned to Vimes. I'm sorry, Sir Samuel, but it's important that people know where they stand with me. These two don't, said Vimes. They'll live. Vimes moved closer to the Wali. Hut, 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 he hissed. You told me that it meant... I thought it would prove a good example to all if you were in the lead, Ahmed whispered. The dregs will always follow a man who is in a hurry for the fray. Lord Russ stepped out into the sunlight and glared at Vimes. Vimes, what the hell are you doing? Not turning a blind eye, my lord. Vimes pushed past and into the shade. There was Prince Cadram, still seated, and there were a lot of armed men. These, he noted almost in passing, didn't have the look of ordinary soldiers. They had the much tougher look of loyal bodyguards. So, said the prince, you come in here armed, under a flag of peace? Are you Prince Cadram? Said Vimes. And you too, Ahmed? Said the prince, ignoring Vimes. Ahmed nodded and said nothing. Oh, not now, thought Vimes.
tough as leather and vicious as a wasp, but now he's in the presence of his king. "You're under arrest," he said. The prince made a little sound between a cough and a laugh.
"I'm what?"
"I'm arresting you for conspiracy to murder your brother, and there may be other charges." The prince put his hand over his face for a moment, and then pulled them down towards his chin, in the action of a tired man endeavouring to come to grips with a trying situation.
"Mr. he began.
"Sir Samuel Vimes, Ankh-Morpork City Watch," said Vimes.
"Well, Mr. Samuel, when I raise my hand, the men behind me will cut you
"I will kill the first man that moves," said Ahmed.
"Then the second man that moves will kill you, traitor!" shouted the prince. "They'll have to move very fast," said Carrot, drawing his sword.
"Shink! Any volunteers to be the third man?" said Vimes. "Anyone?" General Ashal moved, but only very gently, holding up a hand. The bodyguards relaxed slightly.
"What was that lie you uttered about a murder?" he said. "Have you gone mad, Ashal?" said the prince. "Oh, sire, before I can disbelieve these pernicious lies, I need to know what they are." "Vimes, you have gone insane," said Rust. "You can't arrest the commander of an army." "Actually, Mr. Vimes, I think we could," said Carrot. "And the army too, I mean. I don't see why we can't. We could charge them with behavior likely to cause a breach of the peace, sir. I mean, that's what warfare is."
Vimes's face split in a manic grin. "I like it."
"But in fairness, that is the Ankh-Morpork army, are also."
"Then you'd better arrest them too," said Vimes. "Arrest the lot of them. Conspiracy to cause an affray." He started to count on his fingers. "Going equipped to commit a crime, obstruction, threatening behaviour, loitering with intent, travelling for the purposes of committing a crime, malicious lingering, and carrying concealed weapons."
"I don't think that one," Carrot began.
"I can't see 'em," said Vimes.
"Vimes, I order you to come to your senses this minute," roared Lord Rust. "Have you been out in the sun?"
"That's one count of offensive behaviour to his lordship as well," said Vimes. The prince was still staring at Vimes.
"You seriously think that you can arrest an army?" he said. "Perhaps you think you have a bigger army."
"Don't need one," said Vimes. "Power at a point, that's what Tactica says. And here it's the one right on the end of Ahmed's crossbow. That wouldn't frighten a dreg. But you, I reckon you don't think like them. Tell your men to stand down. I want the order to go out right now."
"Even Ahmed would not shoot his prince in cold blood," said Prince Cadram.
Vimes snatched the crossbow. "I wouldn't ask him to." He took aim. "Give that order!" The prince stared at him. "Count of 3, shouted Vimes. General Ashal leaned down and whispered something to the prince. The man's expression stiffened, and he glanced back at Vimes again. "That's right," said Vimes. "It runs in the family."
"It would be murder."
"Would it? In wartime? I'm from Ankh-Morpork. Aren't I supposed to be at war with you? Can't be murder if there's a war on. That's written down somewhere." The general leaned down and whispered. 1, said Vimes. Now there was a hurried argument. 2.
"My prince wishes me to say," the general began.
All right, slow down, said Vimes. If it makes you any happier, I will send out the order, said the general. Let the messengers leave. Vimes nodded and lowered the bow. The prince shifted uneasily. And the Ankh-Morpork army will stand down as well, said Vimes.
But, Vimes, you're on our side, Rust began.
Bloody hell, I'm going to shoot someone today, and it could just be you, Rust, Vimes snarled.
Sir,
Lieutenant Hornet tugged at his commander's jacket. May I have a word? Vimes heard them whispering, and then the young man left.
All right, we are all disarmed, said Rust. We are all under arrest. And now, Commander? I ought to read them their rights, sir, said Carrot.
What are you talking about? Said Vimes.
The men out there, sir.
Oh, yeah, right. Do it then. Oh, gods. I arrested an entire battlefield, Vimes thought, and you can't do that. But I've done it, and we've only got 6 cells back at the yard, and we keep the coal in one of them. You can't do it. Was this the army that invaded your country, ma'am? No, officer, they were taller than that. How about this one? I'm not sure. Get them to march up and down a bit. Carrot's voice could be heard outside, slightly muffled.
Now, can you all hear me? You gentlemen in the back there. Anyone who can hear me. Anyone who can't hear me, please raise. All right. Has anyone got a megaphone? Some cardboard I could roll up? In that case, I'll shout.
What now? Said the prince. I'm taking you back to Ankh-Morpork.
I don't think so. That would be an act of war. You are making a mockery of the whole business, Vimes, said Lord Rust.
So long as I'm doing something right then. Vimes nodded at Ahmed. Then you can answer for your crime here, sire, he said.
In what court?
Said the prince. Ahmed leaned closer to Vimes. What was your plan from here on? He whispered. I never thought we'd get this far. Well, it has been interesting, Sir Samuel. Prince Cadram smiled at Vimes.
Would you like some coffee while you are considering your next move? He said.
He gestured to an ornate silver pot on the table. We've got proof, said Vimes, but he could feel the world dropping away. The point about burning your boats is that you shouldn't be standing on them when you drop the match.
Really? Fascinating. And to whom will you show this proof, Sir Samuel?
We'll have to find a court.
Intriguing. A court in Ankh-Morpork, perhaps? Or a court here?
Someone told me that the world watches, said Vimes. There was a silence, except for the muffled sounds of Carrot outside and the occasional buzz of a fly. Bingally, bingally beep! The disorganizer's voice had lost its chirpy little edge and sounded sleepy and bewildered. Heads turned. 7 a.m. Organized defenders at Rivergate. 7:25. Hand-to-hand fighting in Peach Pie Street. 7:48. 8. Rally survivors in Sator Square. Things to do today. Build barricades. He was aware of surreptitious movement behind him, and then slight pressure. Ahmed was standing back to back with him. What is that thing talking about? Search me. Sounds like it's in a different world, doesn't it? He could feel events racing towards a distant wall. Sweat filled his eyes. He couldn't remember when he'd last had a proper sleep. His legs twinged, his arms ached, pulled down by the heavy bow. Bingley, 8:02 a.m. Death of Corporal Little Bottom. 8:03 a.m. Death of Sergeant Detritus. 8:0333 a.m. and 7 seconds. Death of Constable Visit. 8:03 a.m. and 999 seconds. Death of. They say that in Ankh-Morpork, one of your ancestors killed a king, said the prince. And he also came to no good end. Vimes wasn't listening. Death of Constable Doffer, 8:03 a.m. and 14 seconds. The figure in the throne seemed to take up the whole world. Death of Captain Carrot, Iron Foundation, beep. And Vimes thought, I nearly didn't come. I nearly stayed in Ankh-Morpork. He had always wondered how old Stoneface had felt that frosty morning when he picked up the axe that had no legal blessing because the king wouldn't recognize a court even if a jury could be found. That frosty morning when he prepared to sever what people thought was a link between men and deity. Beep. Things to do today. Die. The sensation flowed into his veins like fresh, warm blood. It was the feeling that you got when the law ran out and you looked into a mocking face on the other side of it, and you decided that you couldn't go on living if you did not step over the line and do one clean thing. They were shouting outside. He blinked away the sweat. Ah, Commander Vimes, said a voice somewhere back over the border. He kept his aching gaze sighted along the bow. Yes? A hand darted down and grabbed the arrow out of its groove. Vimes blinked. His finger automatically squeezed the trigger. The string slammed back with a thunk, and the look on the prince's face, he knew, would keep him warm on cold nights, if there were ever cold nights again. He'd heard them all die, but they weren't dead, and yet the damn thing had sounded so accurate. Lord Veterinary dropped the arrow fastidiously, like a society lady who has had to handle something sticky. Well done, Vimes. I see you've got the donkey up the minaret. Good morning, gentlemen. He gave the company a happy smile. I see I am not too late. Veterinary? Said Rust, seeming to wake up. What are you doing here? This is a battlefield. I wonder. The patrician gave him a very brief smile of his very own. Outside, there seemed to be a lot of men sitting around. Many of them seem to be having what I believe is known in the military parlance as a brew-up, and Captain Carrot is organizing a football match. He's what? Said Vimes, lowering the bow. Suddenly the world had to be real again. If Carrot was doing something as dumb as that, things were normal. Quite a large number of fouls so far, I'm afraid, but I wouldn't call it a battlefield. Who's winning? Ankh-Morpork, I believe, by 2 hacked shins and a broken nose. For the first time in ages, Vimes felt a little pang of patriotism. Everything else in life was in the privy, but when it came to gouging and kicking, he knew which side he was on. Besides, Veterinary went on, I believe quite a large number of people are technically under arrest. And clearly a state of war is not, in practical fact, in being. It is merely a state of football. Therefore, I believe I am, shall we say, back. Excuse me, sire, but this won't take a moment. He held up a metal cylinder and began to unscrew the end. For some reason, Vimes felt inclined to take a few steps away from it. What's that? I thought this might become necessary, said Veterinary. It took some preparation, but I am certain it will work. I hope they're readable. We did our best to keep the damp off them. A thick roll of paper dropped out onto the floor. Commander, have you nothing you should be doing? He added. Refereeing, perhaps? Vimes picked up the roll and read the first few lines. Whereas, heretofore, etc., etc., city of Ankh-Morpork, surrender? What? What? Said Rust and the prince together. Yes, surrender, said Veterinary cheerfully. A little piece of paper, and it's all over. I think you'll find it all in order. You can't, Rust began. You can't, said the prince. Unconditionally, said General Ashal sharply. Yes, I think so, said Veterinary. We give up all claim to Leshp in favour of Klatch. We withdraw all troops from Klatch and our citizens from the island. And as for reparations, shall we say $250,000, plus various favourable trade arrangements, most favoured nation status, and so on and so on? It's all here. Feel free to read it at your leisure. He passed the document over the head of the prince and into the hands of the general, who flicked through the pages. But we haven't got, Vimes began. Perhaps I did get killed, he thought. I'm on the other side, or someone hit me very hard on the head, and this is all some kind of mirage. It's a forgery, snapped the prince. It's a trick. Well, sire, this man certainly does appear to be Lord Veterinary, and these do seem to be the official seals of Ankh-Morpork, said the general. Whereas, whereby, without prejudice, ratification within 4 days, way of trade. Yes, this does, I have to say, look genuine. I won't accept it. I see, sire. It does, though, appear to cover all the points which, in your speech last week, you... I certainly wouldn't accept it, Rust shouted. He waved a finger under Veterinary's nose. You'll be banished for this! But we haven't got that money, Vimes repeated, but this time to himself. We're a very rich city, but we haven't got any actual money. The wealth of Ankh-Morpork is in its people, we're told, and you couldn't remove it with big pliers. He felt the wind change, and Veterinary watching him. And there was something about General Ashal, a certain hunger. I agree with Rust, he said. This is dragging the good name of Ankh-Morpork in the mud. To his mild surprise, he managed to say that without smiling. We lose nothing, sire, General Ashal insisted. They withdraw from Klatch and Leshp. Damned if we will, screamed Lord Rust. Right, and have everyone know we've been beaten, said Vimes. Outwitted? He looked at the prince, whose gaze was hunting from man to man, but occasionally staring at nothing, as if he was watching some inner version.
$250,000 is not enough,
the prince said. Lord Veterinary shrugged.
We can discuss it. There is much that I need to buy.
Things of a sharp metallic nature, no doubt, said Veterinary.
Of course, if we are talking about goods rather than money, there is room for flexibility.
And now we're going to arm him too, Vimes thought.
You'll be out of the city in a week,
Rust screamed. Vimes thought the general smiled briefly. Ankh-Morpork without a veterinary, ruled by people like Rust. His future was looking bright indeed.
The surrender will need to be ratified and formally witnessed, however, said Ashal.
May I suggest Ankh-Morpork? Said Lord Veterinary.
No, on neutral territory, of course,
said the general. But where, between Ankh-Morpork and Klatch, is there such a thing? Said Veterinary.
I suppose there is Leshp, said the general thoughtfully.
What a good idea, said the patrician.
That would not have occurred to me. The place is ours anyway, snapped the prince. Will be, sire, will be, said the general soothingly. We will take possession, quite legally, while the world watches.
And that's it. What about my arrest? Said Vimes.
I'm not going to.
These are matters of state, said Veterinary. And there are diplomatic considerations. I am afraid the good ordering of international affairs cannot hinge upon your concerns over the doings of one man. Once again Vimes felt that the words he was hearing were not the words that were being said.
I won't, he began.
There are larger issues here, but sterling work, nevertheless.
There are big crimes and little crimes. Is that it? Said Vimes.
Why don't you take some well-earned rest, Sir Samuel? You are... Veterinary flashed one of his lightning-fast smiles. A man of action. You deal in swords and chases and facts. Now, alas, it is the time for the men of words who deal in promises and mistrust and opinions. For you, the war is over. Enjoy the sunshine. I trust we shall all be returning home shortly. I would like you to stay, Lord Rust. Vimes realized that he'd been switched off. He spun round and marched out of the tent. Ahmed followed him.
That's your master, is it?
No, he's just the man who pays my wages.
Often hard to know the difference, said Ahmed sympathetically.
Vimes sat down on the sand. He wasn't certain how he'd been managing to stand up. There was some kind of a future now. He hadn't the faintest idea what was in it, but there was one. There hadn't been one 5 minutes ago. He wanted to talk now. That way, he didn't have to think about the disorganizer's death roll. It had sounded so accurate.
What's going to happen to you?
He said, to drive the thought out of his mind.
When this is over, I mean. Your boss isn't going to be pleased with you.
Oh, the desert can swallow me. He'll send people after you. He looks the type. The desert will swallow them. Without chewing. Believe it.
It shouldn't have to be like this,
Vimes shouted at the sky in general.
You know, sometimes I dream that we could deal with the big crimes, that we could make a law for countries and not just for people, and people like him would have
Ahmed pulled him upright and patted him on the shoulder.
I know how it is, he said. I dream too.
You do?
Yes, generally of fish.
There was a roar from the crowd.
Rah! Someone scored a convincing foul by the sound of it, said Vimes.
They slid and staggered up on the side of a dune and watched. Someone broke from the scrum and, punching and kicking, staggered towards the Klatchian goal.
Isn't that man your butler? Said Ahmed.
Yes.
One of your soldiers said he bit a man's nose off.
Vimes shrugged.
He's got a very pointed look if I don't use the sugar tongs. I know that.
A white figure marched authoritatively through the mill of players, blowing a whistle.
And that man, I believe, is your king.
No.
Really? Then I am Queen Punjitrum of Sumtri. Carrots a copper, same as me.
A man like that could inspire a handful of broken men to conquer a country.
Fine, just so long as he does it on his day off. And he too takes orders from you.
You are a remarkable man, Sir Samuel.
But you would not, I think, have killed the prince.
No,
but you'd have killed me if I had.
Oh, yes. Flagrant murder in front of witnesses. I am, after all, a copper. They'd reached the camels. One looked round as Ahmed prepared to mount, thought better of spitting at him, and hit Vimes instead, with great precision. Ahmed looked back at the footballers. Up in Klatchistan, the nomads play a game very similar to that, he said, but on horseback. The aim is to get the object round the goal.
Object?
Probably best just to think of it as an object, Sir Samuel. And now I think I shall head that way. There are thieves in the mountains. The air is clear up there. As you know, there is always work for policemen.
You thinking of returning to Ankh-Morpork at any time?
You'd like to see me there, Sir Samuel.
It's an open city. But be sure to call in at Sidopolis Yard when you arrive.
Ha! And we can reminisce about old times.
No, so you can hand over that sword. We'd give you a receipt, and you can pick it up when you leave.
I'd take some persuading, Sir Samuel.
Oh, I think I'd only ask once.
Ahmed laughed, nodded at Vimes, and rode away. For a few minutes he was a shape at the base of a column of dust, and then a shifting dot in the heat haze, and then the desert swallowed him. The day wore on. Various Klatchian officials and some of the Ankh-Morpork people were summoned to the tent. Vimes wandered close to it a few times and heard the sound of voices raised in dispute. Meanwhile, the armies dug in. Someone had already erected a crude signpost, its arms pointing to various soldiers' homes. Since these were all in part of Ankh-Morpork, the arms all pointed exactly the same way. He found most of the watch sitting out of the wind, while a wizened Klatchian woman cooked quite a complicated meal over a small fire. They all seemed to be fully alive, with the usual slight question mark in the case of Reg Shoe.
"Where have you been, Sergeant Cullen?" said Vimes. "Been sworn to secrecy about that, sir, by his lordship."
Right. Vimes didn't press the point. Getting information out of Colin was like getting water out of a flannel. It could wait.
"And Nobby?"
"Right here, sir."
The wizened woman saluted in a clash of bangles.
That's you?
Yes, sir. Doing the dirty work as per the woman's role in life, sir, despite the fact that there are less senior watchmen present, sir.
Now then, Nobby, said Cullen. Sherry can't cook. We can't let Reg do it because bits fall into the pan. And Angua
doesn't do cookery, said Angua. She was lying back on a rock with her eyes closed. The rock was the slumbering shape of detritus.
Anyway, you just started doing the cooking like you was expecting to have to do it, said Cullen.
Kebab, sir, said Nobby. There's plenty.
You certainly got a lot of food from somewhere, said Vimes.
Klatch and Quartermaster, sir, said Nobby, grinning beneath his veil. Used my sexual wiles on him, sir.
Vimes's kebab stopped halfway to his mouth and dripped lamb fat onto his legs. He saw Angua's eyes slam open and stare in horror at the sky.
I told him I'd take my clothes off and scream if he didn't give me some grub, sir.
That'd scare the daylights out of me, sure enough, said Vimes. He saw Angua breathe out again.
Yeah, I reckon if I played my cards right, I could be one of them fatale femmes, said Nobby. I've only got to wink at a man and he runs a mile. Could be useful, that.
I told him he could change back into his uniform, but he says he feels more comfortable like this, whispered Cullen to Vimes. I'm getting a bit worried, to tell you the truth.
I can't handle this, Vimes thought. This isn't in the book of rules. How can I explain this? He began.
I don't want any of them innuendos, said Nobby. It's a good idea to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. That's all I'm saying.
Well, so long as it's just
I've just been getting in touch with my softer side, all right? Seeing the other man's point of view sort of thing, even if he's a woman.
He looked at their faces and waved his hands vaguely.
All right, I'll put my uniform on after I've tidied up around the camp. Will that make you all happy?
Something smells nice. Carrot ran up, bouncing his football. He'd stripped to his waist. The whistle bounced on its string around his neck.
I've declared half-time, he said, sitting down. So I've sent some of the lads into Gebra to get 4,000 oranges. Shortly, the combined Ankh-Morpork regimental bands will put on a display of counter-marching while playing a selection of military favorites.
Have they practiced counter-marching? said Angua.
I don't think so.
Should be good then.
Carrot,
said Vimes. I don't wish to pry, but how in the middle of a desert did you find a football? And the voice in the back of his mind insisted. You heard him die. You heard them all die. Somewhere else.
Oh, these days I carry a deflated one in my pack, sir. A very pacifying object, a football. Are you all right, sir?
What? Oh, yes, just a bit tired. So who's winning? Vimes patted his pockets and found his last cigar.
It's broadly speaking a tie, sir. I had to send 473 men off, though. Klatch is now well ahead on fouls, I'm sorry to say.
Sport as a substitute for war, eh? Said Vimes. He rootled in the ashes of Nobby's fire and pulled out a half-consumed, well, it helped to think of it as a desert coal. Carrot gave him a solemn look.
Yes, sir. No one's using weapons. And have you noticed how the Klatchian army is getting smaller? Some of the chiefs from distant parts are taking their men away.
They say there's no point in staying if there's not going to be a war. I don't think they really wanted to be here in any case, to tell you the truth. And I don't think it's going to be easy to get them to come back. There was shouting behind them. Men were coming out of the tent arguing. Lord Rust was among them. He looked around talking to his companions. Then he spotted Vimes and rocketed furiously towards him. "Vimes!" Vimes looked up, hand halfway to his cigar. "We would have won, you know," growled Rust. "We who would have won. But we were betrayed on the brink of success." Vimes stared at him. "And it's your fault, Vimes. We'll be the laughing stock of Klatch. You know the value these people put on face, and we won't have any. Veterinary is finished, and so are you, and so is your stupid, mongrel, cowardly watch. What do you say to that, Vimes, hey?" The watchmen sat like statues, waiting for Vimes to say something, or even more. "Hey, Vimes!" Rust sniffed. "What's that smell?" Vimes slowly shifted his gaze to his fingers. Smoke was rising. There was a faint sizzling. He stood up and brought his fingers up in front of Rust's face. "Take it," he said. "That's just some trick." "Take it," said Vimes. Mesmerized, Rust licked his fingers and gingerly took the ember. "It doesn't hurt." "Yes, it does," said Vimes. "In fact, it..." "Argh!" Rust jumped back, dropped the ember, and sucked his blistering fingers. "The trick is not to mind that it hurts," said Vimes. "Now go away." "You won't last long," Rust sneered. "You wait until we're back in the city." "You just wait." He strode off, holding his stricken hand. Vimes went back and sat down by the fire. After a while he said, "Where's he gone now?" "Back to the line, sir. I think he's ordering the men home." "Can he see us?" "No." "You sure?" "There's too many people in the way, sir." "You're quite sure?" "Not unless he can see through camels, sir." "Good." Vimes stuck his fingers in his mouth. Sweat was pouring down his face. Damn! Has anyone got any cold water?" Captain Jenkins had got his ship afloat again. It had taken a lot of digging and some careful work with bolts of timber and the assistance of a Klatchian captain who had decided not to let patriotism stand in the way of profit. He and his crew were resting on the shore when a greeting ran out from over them. He squinted into the sun. That can't be Vimes, can it?" The crew stared. "Let's get aboard right now!" A figure started down the face of the dune. It moved very fast, much faster than a man could run on the shifting sand, and moved in a zigzag fashion. As it drew nearer, it turned out to be a man standing on a shield. It slid to a halt a few feet away from the astonished Jenkins. "Good of you to wait, Captain," said Carrot. "Very many thanks. The others will be down in a minute." Jenkins looked back to the top of the dune. There were other darker figures there now. "Those are dregs!" he shouted. "Oh yes, lovely people. Have you met them at all?" Jenkins stared at Carrot. "Did you win?" he said. "Oh yes, on penalties in the end." Green-blue light filtered through the tiny windows of the boat. Lord Veterinary pulled the steering levers until he was pretty certain that they were heading towards a suitable ship, and said, "What is it I can smell, Sergeant Cullen?"
It's Nobby, sir,"
said Cullen, pedalling industriously.
"Corporal Nobbs?"
Nobby almost blushed.
I bought a bottle of scent, sir, for my young lady.
Lord Veterinary coughed. "What exactly do you mean by your young lady?" he said.
Well, for when I get one,
said Nobby. Ah, even Lord Veterinary sounded relieved.
On account of I expect I shall now, me having fully explored my sexual nature and now feeling fully comfortable with myself,
said Nobby. "You feel comfortable with yourself?"
Yes, sir,
said Nobby happily. "And when you find this lucky lady, you will give her this bottle of..."
It's called Casper Night, sir.
Of course. Very floral, isn't it?
Yes, sir. That's 'cause of the jasmine and rare ungulates in it, sir.
And yet, at the same time, curiously penetrative. Nobby grinned.
Good value for money, sir. A little goes a long way.
Not far enough, possibly. But Nobby rusted even irony.
I got it in the same shop that Sarge got the hump, sir.
Ah, yes. There wasn't very much space in the boat, and most of it was taken up with Sergeant Cullen's souvenirs. He'd been allowed a brief shopping expedition.
"To take home something for the wife, sir. Otherwise, I'll never hear the last of it."
"Mrs. Cullen will like a stuffed camel hump, will she, Sergeant?" said the patrician, doubtfully.
"Yes, sir. She can put things on it, sir."
"And the set of nested brass tables?"
"To put things on, sir."
"And the..." There was a clanking. "Set of goat bells, ornamental coffee pot, miniature camel saddle, and this strange glass tube with little bands of different coloured sand in it. What are these for?"
"Conversation pieces, sir."
"You mean people will say things like, 'What are they for?' do you?" Sergeant Cullen looked pleased with himself.
"See, sir, we're talking about him already."
"Remarkable." Sergeant Cullen coughed and indicated with a tilt of his head the hunched figure of Leonard, who was sitting in the stern with his head in his hands.
"He's a bit quiet, sir,"
he whispered. "Can't seem to get a word out of him." "He has a lot on his mind," said the patrician. The watchman pedalled onwards for a while, but the close confines of the boat encouraged a confidentiality that would never have been found on land.
"Sorry to hear you're getting the sack, sir," said Cullen.
"Really?" said Lord Veterinary.
"You definitely get my vote if we had elections."
"Capital."
"I think people want the thumbscrew of firm government myself."
"Good."
"Your predecessor, Lord Snapcase, now he was mental. But like I've always said, people know where they stand with Lord Veterinary."
"Well done."
"They might not like where they're standing, of course."
Lord Veterinary looked up. They were under a boat now, and it seemed to be going in the right direction. He steered the boat until he heard the thunk of hull hitting hull, and gave the auger a few turns. "Am I being sacked, Sergeant?" he said, sitting back.
"Well, I heard Lord Russ people say that if you
Ratify, said Lord Veterinary.
"Yeah, if you ratify that surrender next week, they'll get you exiled, sir."
A week is a long time in politics, Sergeant. Cullen's face widened in what he thought of as a knowing grin. He tapped the side of his nose. "Ah, politics," he said. "Ah, you should have said."
Yeah, they'll laugh at the other foot then, eh?
"Got some secret plan? I'll be bound," said Cullen. "You know where the chicken is all right." "I can see there's no fooling such skilled observers of the carnival that is life," said Lord Veterinary. "Yes, indeed, there is something I intend to do." He adjusted the position of the camel hump buffet, which in fact smelled of goat and was beginning to leak sand, and lay back. Puff, a bouffant or fluffy part of a garment or accessory. He adjusted the position of the camel hump poof, which in fact smelled of goat and was beginning to leak sand, and lay back. "I'm going to do nothing. Wake me up if anything interesting happens." Nautical things happened. The wind spun about so much that a weathercock might as well be harnessed to grinding corn. At one point, there was a fall of anchovies. And Commander Vimes tried to sleep. Jenkins showed him a hammock, and Vimes realized that this was another sheep's eyeball. No one could possibly sleep in something like that. Sailors probably kept them up for show and had real beds tucked away somewhere. He tried to make himself comfortable in the hold and dozed while the others talked in the corner. They were very politely keeping out of his way.
Ordship wouldn't give the whole thing away, would he? What were we fighting for? He'll have a hard job hanging on to the job after this, that's for sure. It's dragging the good name of Ankh-Morpork in the mud, like Mr. Vimes said.
For Ankh-Morpork, mud is up. That was Angua.
On the other hand, everyone is still breathing.
That was Detritus.
That's a vitalist remark. Sorry, Reg. What you scratching for? I think I picked up a filthy foreign disease.
Sorry, Angua said. What can a zombie catch?
Don't like to say.
You're talking to someone who knows every brand of flea powder they sell in Ankh-Morpork, Reg.
Oh, if you must know. Mice, miss. It's shameful. I keep myself clean, but they just find a way.
Have you tried everything?
Excepting ferrets. If his lordship goes, who'll take over?
That was Sherry.
Lord Rust?
He'd last 5 minutes.
Maybe the guilds will get together and
they'll fight like
ferrets,
said Reg.
The cure's worse than the disease. Cheer up, there'll still be a watch.
That was Carrot. Yes, but Mr. Vimes will be out on his ear, 'cause of politics. Vimes decided to keep his eyes closed. A silent crowd was waiting on the quay side when the ship finally docked. They watched Vimes and his men walk down the gangway. There were 1 or 2 coughs, and then someone called out,
"Say it ain't so, Mr. Vimes!"
At the foot of the gangplank, Constable Dorfel saluted stiffly.
"Lord Rust's ship got in this morning, sir," the golem said.
"Anyone seen Veterinary?"
"No, sir."
"Afraid to show his face,"
someone shouted.
"Lord Rust said you were to do your duty, damn you,"
said Dorfel. Golems had a certain literalness of speech. He handed Vimes a sheet of paper. Vimes grabbed it and read the first few lines.
"What's this? Emergency Council?" And this? Treason? Against veterinary? I'm not carrying this out. Can I see, sir?
said Carrot. It was Angua who noticed the wave, while the others were staring at the warrant. Even in human form, a werewolf's ears are pretty sensitive. She wandered back to the quayside and looked downriver. A wall of white water a few feet high was running up the Ankh. As it passed, boats were lifted and rocked. It sloshed by her, sucking at the quay and making Jenkins's boat dance for a moment. There was a crash of crockery somewhere aboard. Then it was gone, a line of surf heading towards the next bridge. For a moment the air smelled not of the Ankh's eau de latrine, but of sea winds and salt. Jenkins appeared out of his cabin and looked over the side. What was that? The tide changing? Angua called up.
We came up on the tide, said Jenkins. Beats me. One of those phenomena, I expect.
Angua went back to the group. Vimes was already red in the face.
It has been signed by quite a lot of the major guilds, sir, Carrot was saying. In fact, they're all here except the beggars and the seamstresses. Really? Well, piss on them. Who are they to give me an order like that?
Angua saw the look of pain across Carrot's face.
Someone has to give us orders, sir. In a general sort of way. We aren't supposed to make up our own. That's sort of the point. Yes, but not like. And I suppose they represent the will of the people. That bunch, don't give me that rubbish. We'd have been slaughtered if we'd fought. And then we'd be in just the same position as we... This does look legal, sir. It's ridiculous. It's not as if we are accusing him, sir. We just have to make sure he turns up at the rat's chamber. Look, sir, you've had a very tiring time. But arrest veterinary. I can't.
Vimes stopped because his ears had caught up. And because that was the point, wasn't it? If you could arrest anyone, then that's what you had to do. You couldn't turn round and say, but not him. Ahmed would snigger. Old Stoneface would turn in all 5 of his graves.
I can, can't I? He said sadly. All right. Put out a description, Dorfel. That will not be necessary, sir.
The crowds moved aside as Lord Veterinary walked along the quay, with Nobby and Colin behind him. At least, if it wasn't Sergeant Cullen, it was a very strangely deformed camel.
I think I caught quite a lot of that, Commander, said Lord Veterinary. Please, do your duty. All you've got to do is go to the palace, sir.
You're not going to handcuff me? Vimes's mouth dropped open.
Why should I do that? Treason is very nearly the ultimate crime, Sir Samuel. I think I should demand handcuffs. All right, if you insist. Vimes nodded at Dorfel. Cuff him then.
You haven't any shackles by any chance? Said Lord Veterinary, as Dorfel produced a pair of handcuffs.
We may as well do this thing properly. No, we don't have any shackles. I was only trying to help Sir Samuel. Shall we be going?
The crowd weren't jeering. That was almost frightening. They were just waiting, like an audience watching to see how the trick was going to be done. They parted again as the patrician headed towards the centre of the city. He stopped and turned.
What was the other thing?
Oh yes, I don't have to be dragged on a hurdle, do I?
Only if you're actually executed, my lord, said Carrot cheerfully.
Traditionally, traitors are dragged to their place of execution on a hurdle, and then you're hung, drawn, and quartered. Carrot looked embarrassed. I know about the hanging and quartering, but I'm not sure how you're drawn, sir. Are you any good with a pencil, Captain? Said Lord Veterinary innocently. No, he's not, said Vimes. Do you actually have a hurdle? No, snapped Vimes. Oh, well, I believe there's a sports equipment shop in Shear Street, just in case, Sir Samuel. A figure walked across the trampled sand near Gebra and paused when a voice very near ground level said hopefully, Bingily, bingily beep. The disorganizer felt itself being picked up. What kind of thing are you? I am the disorganizer Mach 2, with many handy hard-to-use features. Insert name here. Such as? Even the disorganizer's tiny mind felt slightly uneasy. The voice it was speaking to didn't sound right. I know what time it is everywhere, it ventured. So do I. I can maintain an up-to-the-minute contacts directory. The disorganizer felt movements that suggested the new owner had mounted a horse. Really? I have a great many contacts. There you are then, said the demon, trying to hold on to its rapidly draining enthusiasm. So, I make a note of them, and when you want to contact them again... That is generally not necessary. Mostly they stay contacted. Well, do you have many appointments? There were hoofbeats, and then no sound but rushing wind. More than you could possibly imagine. No, I think perhaps your talents could be better employed elsewhere. There was more rushing wind, and then a splash,